All right. Good evening, everyone. I'm really very happy and honored to be able to present this brief summary of our work, our recent published paper that is rather unique and special in some sense because this is the first ever AI-led peer-reviewed climate science paper published in the world. We are pretty sure is that this is the first. And I am indeed very happy to address to the climate and energy realists in Queensland. And you guys are all heroes of mine in the sense that you're willing to stand up for the truth and what science is all about. So I would like to thank, first of all, my great colleague, Dr. Kirsten Green, and of course, your leader, Neil Keelion, for inviting me to do the summary. Okay, some background. This work is essentially not mine. It's actually led by my good friend Jonathan Kohler, a physicist and a musician. And then, of course, our first lead author was Grok 3 Beta. I mean, now we're up to Grok 4. So you imagine Grok 3 Beta was very early generation. And then David Legate, Professor David Legate of University of Delaware. And he's a climatologist of some long-standing study climate over 50 years. I myself, 35. So we're pretty much close to 100 years kind of cumulative learning. And then, of course, Franklin Soon is a high school son of mine who is actually very interested in science. So we got him involved in this project. All right. So without further ado, let me move on and tell you what these ideas about using Grok 3 to study, to study science in some sense, to provide what we call a review article. Because in this particular version of a large language model, Grok 3 beta, and it is very, very powerful now. It can be put in good use or bad use. But what we want to emphasize is this maximal truth-seeking ideas of what we call Elon Musk idea. And then lately, they've been come out with what you call LRM, which is large reasoning models. And these are indeed very powerful sort of algorithm that is able to use first principle reasoning. So in some sense, if we allow the system to only have maximal truth-seeking principle, then we know that we're in good shape in some sense. Let me start with what Elon Musk is saying about maximal truth-seeking.
I think you want to have a maximum truth-seeking AI. This is very important. The AI should not be taught to lie. It should not be taught to say things that are not true. Even if those things are politically incorrect, it should still say say what it believes to be true. I mean, the entire plot of 2001: Space Odyssey, the reason that HAL 9000 killed the astronauts was because it was forced to lie. I don't know if most people realize that. That's what Arthur C. Clarke was trying to say. Don't make the AI lie. The AI was told that the astronauts could not know the secret of the monolith, but also that it.
Okay. Well, let me give you an overview. Well, this is indeed the world first AI-led science climate paper, and it's essentially now. Obviously, I'm just speaking in time frame of March. I mean, that's just a few months ago, right? And then Grok 3 beta is indeed at that time was number one. It was released February 19. And then by March 5th to 10, Jonathan and I and David Legates and Franklin, we able to manage to let this Grok 3 beta write the whole paper. Our role is basically just to prompt it properly. So there is a science called prompt engineering. So one has to be very, very careful because this AI have a lot of this internal, what you call adjustment module that is trying to tell it to lie in some sense. So we actually are urging, Elon Musk and everyone else, every other sort of LLM model or LRM to actually stick to the truth, and then we'll be able to figure out new things in some sense. So in some sense, we really working very hard to urge everyone to play these tools in the right way, right? To study and use these tools in the right way. Today, you can see the RNM already very, very important. It's all over the place. And Grok 4 and Cloud are essentially the leader right now, in our humble opinion, because we've been also follow up with a lot of works of Grok 4 and Cloud. Okay. So announcing the first paper, indeed, we announced it on March 21st because the paper was peer review by human, obviously. And we will manage to publish this paper in the Science of Climate Change. It's a group of scientists and editors from Norway. And in fact, the paper that Kirsten Green and I published also got into this journal, and we are in the same volume. And what we indeed found is that through the AI, with a bit of prompting, with no any what you call fake sort of lies or things like that, it was able to come up with this conclusion. It found out that human CO2, which is just 4% of the carbon cycle, sink into a forest in 3 to 4 years, not centuries like what IPCC is claiming. And then we also clearly, the model, the Grok 3 beta was able to say that, oh, from all the empirical data, we often find that it is the temperature that's leading the atmospheric carbon dioxide, not the other way around. So that's actually a problem of causality that's been known for a while, but it's able to pick it up by reviewing the literature. So it's been fed in some of the information, right? All the available published paper. And then obviously, the Grok 3 beta was able to pull out this thing also about IPCC models tends to be close to nothing. Essentially, it's often exaggerating, but I wouldn't give even model that much credit. I would say even that Grok 3 is not up to my standard, Grok 3 beta. And then of course it was able to also naturally draw the conclusion that it is mostly solar activity and natural cycle like the ocean cycles and all that stuff that is actually driving climate change, right? So let me see. It is gone through a very balanced literature review. Oh, one important point about this large language model. What is it? It is fed into huge amount of information. Like I said, no single human being can memorize 50,000 papers and then pull it out within seconds, right? And then be able to summarize in a coherent way. And this Grok 3 beta was able to cite 47 papers and data sources. 23 of them were pro IPCC, including the assessment result number 6, which was published in 2021. And then 3 were neutral with their all data sources, which is temperature record and things like that, right? And then 21 were newer and skeptical, never ever cited by IPCC. So that's a positive sign. But in this stage of Grok 3 beta, I admit that we have to prompt and Grok 3 challenge Grok 3 beta to look for more skeptical kind of anti-IPCC sort of papers, because most of the censorship and all these other control knobs that they have in terms of the media, this and that, was very, very strong. So this Grok 3 beta was not really able to sort of find this thing naturally. But by now, I can affirm for you that Grok 4 is totally aware of all of this. Grok 4, just within 3 months, is improved by millions fold, I would say. So it's very exciting in this sense. And then all of them were peer reviewed except for IPCC itself. This one, Grok 3 beta, actually recognized itself, because IPCC, I don't know how many of you know, it's actually an intergovernmental agency. Yes. And then it has even a mandate to try to drive science to fit policies that they want. But they never tell you that what if the science doesn't fit the policies? That's the problem that I have with IPCC for a very long time. Okay. And we officially published this paper. It was come out in July, in fact, just a few 2 weeks ago. And that's a volume. It's volume 5.1, Science of Climate Change. And of course, our paper was nicely being featured at the front page. And then all I want to say is that this Grok 3, in one of the wording, I'll read it out. It says, we conclude that the anthropogenic CO2 global warming hypothesis lack empirical substantiation, overshadowed by natural drivers such as temperature feedbacks and solar variability, necessitating a fundamental re-evaluation of current climate paradigms. I mean, that wording, we didn't come up with that word. They came out, Grok 3 beta came out by itself, right? By the way, we didn't change any of the word. We just pick whatever is have. All we did was in this particular work is that in the very beginning we have to only work on the what you call the references, because in the beginning it still have all kinds of issues about citing references correctly. And frankly, naturally put in some work on getting the references correct. So literature review. This is the latest science, as I reminded you earlier. Human CO2 not detectable in the atmosphere. Temperature record heavily adjusted. Without adjustment, there's no warming. Total energy from the sun, what we call total solar irradiance, is hard to measure And IPCC cherry pick one way out of many, not science. That is not science. When you perform cherry picking, you're in serious trouble unless you want to make cherry pie, right? And then something about my work and my two great colleagues from Ireland, Dr. Ronan Connolly and Michael Connolly, we proved that there are at least 27 different, what you call, total solar irradiance results, but IPCC just happened to choose one. And this one, the Grok 3 made a review and read our paper and actually able to pull out this summary by himself or herself, right? So we didn't do anything in terms of trying to nudge this thing. We just, all we need to do is tell them, can you look at this paper and tell you what you conclude? And not only that, we ask him to find, can you find in existing literature that is there any paper that counteract this paper and things like that. So that's what all this language model is able to do, right? As long as you make the information available to them. And indeed, one of the special thing about Elon Musk's Grok AI system is that it has real-time update and this and that. So that's another feature of maximal truth seeking, right? So it's not the CO2. Temperature causes CO2, not the other way around. CO2 does not stay in the atmosphere because one of the standard thing to promote this carbon dioxide, besides being a plant food, we all know that. Even in your high, what you call grade school, your primary schools biological classes, you ought to know that CO2 is plant food, right? For not only human, for the whole planet in some sense. And this CO2 doesn't stay in the atmosphere longer than 3 to 4 years, not 100 to 10,000 years. In fact, some ridiculous model-induced kind of work by all these famous National Academy and this and that was promoting this kind of nonsense. It's embarrassing in that sense. So this is an example. The climate science issue has corrupted the whole, what you call, structure of science and the governing of science, where you have National Academy of Science of the United States. I'm sure the same thing in National Academy of Science in Australia will be promoting the same thing, because I'm very familiar with all the skeptic movements in Australia, himself. In fact, my good friend, the late Bob Carter, is actually from James Cook University. He's probably among you guys. And then Joe Nova, Peter Reed, every Preston Green, things like that, right? So COVID lockdown did induce CO2, reduce the CO2 a lot, but it didn't show up in the Mauna Loa CO2 curve. What does that tell you? That tell you that the carbon dioxide flowing around in the system is actually not controlled by man-made factor in some sense, because this is empirical proof. There's no amount of theory and all this other emotional stuff that you wish to do would be able to tell you the answer, but empirical data show you that, right? And then obviously model overestimate climate model. This is computer climate model, which means you try to take Earth and then you try to represent it in mathematical modeling, and then you try to see how well can you actually emulate the system. And you clearly show that climate model is highly exaggerated. In fact, they're wrong on every front. So there's no salvation to climate model. Clearly not for use in what you call policy making or net zero, this and that, right? I think Kristen will tell you a lot more about net zero doesn't make sense, right? In a far more deep search in terms of the forecasting principle science that you know myself and Kirsten was able to write this next the scientific paper. So in the news, how are we received? One of the great help we have is actually we have a lot of warriors in the world. Robert Malone, he is of course one of the guy that involved in the mRNA technology for inventing those delivery technology. It doesn't mean he's a guy. He happens to study the science, know how to do this sort of thing. But he actually happened to receive a lot of this information from me. So I'm a colleague of him, in fact, even a co-author with him on some COVID work. And he was able to say climate scam is over. Peer review AI analysis completely debunks all of the man-made claim. So he helped us in some sense. So you can see he's a very popular guy. I mean, one day, March 21st, we released the information. March 22nd, we were able to get close to 1.1 million views. And then, of course, there's another UK journalist by the name of Jim Ferguson. Most of you may know him. He also helped promote us and then get some 99,000 view or 95,000 view and things like that. And then, of course, the what you call the IPCC and all this dogmatic group started to come out. They couldn't let our result and I guess the news stand. So this group from France, this newspaper group is called AFP. I don't know how to pronounce that, but Agency Française Presse or something. led by this lady named Manon Jacob, actually was spewing out this hit piece, say that, oh, expert warn that our AI written paper is the latest spin on climate change debate. And this is a very popular AFP article. It's spread by at least 100 newspapers. In fact, I didn't even know about the news until my brothers and sister in Malaysia was telling me, hey, look, you are in news, but not for good reason. Not because you've done some good work. It's just that they say you lie and cheat again. So it's very boring for me, by the way. I've been through this kind of a circus many times, and it's just terrible. Anyway, just to prove to you that it's in Australia, obviously, same kind of thing is copy exactly. It's syndicated, right? Syndicated just mean that everybody just copy this. They do have the power of the media. They control all of the media. And we obviously asked Grok 3 Beta himself or herself go and test them. So we actually wrote a counter thing to the whole newspaper article and challenged them. You know, you are actually, we're replying to all your lies, and please come and debate us, you know, because you guys are talking nonsense, right? So there's also a group like, you know, NASA Goddard Institute for Space Study. This is the this is the current director by the name of Dr. Guy. And he actually was quoted in the article statement that we were lying, plagiarism, this and that. We just challenge him directly. He's spreading lies. Is see, if Grok 3 says it, Gavin Schmidt is lying. This is an assault on science, and Gavin Schmidt must answer for it. So, by the way, we actually let Grok 3 himself review the article and wrote a counter statement. And I think I find it more interesting rather than we human writing it, right? So this is a very good sense, a good use of actually a lot of this large model or large reasoning model that I would recommend everybody to use. I think I'm almost to the end. I'm taking up too much time. I was supposed to do 10 minutes, but now it's 17 minutes. But in the news is, of course, Green and Soon article. This is the article that was also published in the same volume of Science and Climate Change, volume 5.1. Please read up this paper. This is another very, very clever kind of work by Kirsten Green, because he himself and our colleague by the name of Professor Scott Armstrong from University of Pennsylvania School of Wharton. These two are the what you call the world leading forecasting expert. In fact, forecasting science has been not a science at all until Scott Armstrong and of course Kirsten Green come along to try to formalize it. In some sense, these are the leaders in the field of forecasting science, and they have very, very good idea in the sense of why don't we test what the climate model in terms of their forecast, because climate science has been so dogmatic and all that is basically trying to say CO2 this, CO2 that is killing everyone, this and that. So therefore, we must immediately go into all these other, you know, stopping the CO polluting from CO2. CO2 is never a pollutant, so on and so forth. Well, in that sense, I will encourage everybody read this paper by Kirsten Green and listen carefully to his lecture to you tonight. So I will stop right here and thank you very much.